Filmability. My name is Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, a history of disability cinema, which you can find on Amazon and Kindle paperback. Welcome if you're joining me for the first time, and welcome back if you're coming back for more. Remember, you can find me wherever you can get your podcasts, so like, share, comment, subscribe and all that good stuff. This week's film is Daredevil, the 2003 adaptation of the Marvel superhero comic created by Stan Lee, Ben Everett and Jack Kirby. The film is directed and written by Mark Steven Johnson. He also directed films such as When in Rome with Kristen Bell and Josh Duhamel, and Champagne Problems with Mindy Kelly and Tom Wozniak. He also wrote the screenplays for the Grumpy Old Men films with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. Also Jack Frost starring Michael Keaton. He also wrote and directed films such as Simon Birch and of course Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage. Now, Daredevil wasn't exactly well received at the time, and quite honestly, time hasn't been kind to it. However, over the past 10 years there's been a resurgence of interest in the character, and both Netflix and Disney have managed to bring the character back to life with great success. You can find Daredevil 2003 on Disney Plus worldwide, and in both digital and physical formats. But also keep in mind that this episode will be covering the original theatrical cut and not the director's cut, which I heard is much better. So without further ado, let's get on with the film. The film opens with a CGI city landscape among some credits, reflecting Daredevil's radar abilities. All of the cast names are in Braille before being turned into English. And I watched it on Disney Plus, and I must say that it's not a great confidence when the skip intro bit comes up. I'm not sure this happens in a lot of movies, but it just was a bit distracting. It doesn't give the best level of confidence in this film. But anyway, you see a rat going down a sewer, and it sort of looks like the sewer sort of emits steam, and so implies that rat is completely toast. You watch the first bit, you'll notice it. Anyway, the camera pans up to a large church, intercut with flashes of action scenes, and at the top, Daredevil has his body wrapped around a crucifix, while a helicopter is shining a light down from above. This is Matt Murdock, and he's played by Ben Affleck. Daredevil goes inside the church, crawling along the floor and looking in pain. Father Everett, played by Derek O'Connor, takes off his mask and reveals his face, with a voiceover talking about his past and the bullies he had to face when he was a child. And he talks about his dad being a boxer. At home, young Matt takes a beer bottle away from his dad and turns off the TV. His dad, Jack, played by David Keith, is asleep on the bed. When he wakes up, he sees Matt has got into a fight. He tells him he can do anything if he's not afraid, so that's how the bullies won't hurt him. Cut to Matt in the streets, seeing his dad being roughed up by a criminal. He runs away through the streets, and a freak accident slices open a barrel of toxic waste, which splashes across his face. He wakes up in hospital, and it's implied that he can hear more things and can see in radar. Matt freaks out and crawls into the corner of his room, still being able to see and hear things in a way that he couldn't before. His dad comes in and apologises because he feels responsible for Matt's accident, but Matt hugs him and says that it's okay. And he cuts on a montage of Matt reading in Braille and scenes of him being with his dad while his dad's training. The voice continues and it says that he calls the sense of sound that he hears a radar sense. He can hear things as well as he can see things. I think they're sort of combined so that he can hear the things around him, and it forms an image in his mind of what he could possibly see. And this one's one of those boxing bags. I'm not sure what the technical word for it is. And he starts to punch it, and it starts moving in a really, really exaggerated way, sort of very sped up. So it's showing that Matt is not only able to hear things better, but he is strong. There are images of him moving athletically through the street, and a little montage of that, and then followed by a scene where he's at a crossing and he stops an old man from going into the street just before a car goes past. And this is the Stan Lee cameo, as is with all Marvel movies. And this seems like a good opportunity to talk about superheroes, in particular those who are disabled. Enforcing the myth that when one sense gets taken away, the other ones get heightened, Stan Lee and Tal created a character who is disabled, but can also be seen as an equal because of his fighting skills and superpowers. However, in doing so, it makes a disabled character seem to forget their disability entirely, because these superheroes bypass their disability entirely. And so although to the non-disabled audience, a character like Daredevil can still be seen as a heroic figure, because they don't have to think about the disability too much. However, what would be so wrong with a disabled character who also happened to be a superhero? That's not to say that Daredevil hasn't been an inspirational figure for many disabled people. The character's given blind people a chance to be recognised, and dare I say even normalised in society. Having a non-disabled audience see a disabled superhero helps to emphasise how fantastical the character really is, and has helped to ground them in the reality of what it may actually be like in the real world. While we're here as well, let's talk about the term superhero and how it has been applied to disabled people over the years. Lately it seems that calling disabled people superheroes is a way to lift them up and empower them, showing the world what they are capable of doing rather than what they are not capable of doing. However, it also suggests that a disabled person cannot simply be a disabled person, and that there has to be some kind of special label put on them so that it can make them feel better about themselves. It also suggests that a disabled person is not good enough by themselves, as if there has to be something special about them so that they can even start to be seen as equal. Having fought for so many years to be seen as equal must be just as frustrating too, because it may seem that to some people, somebody else has decided that disabled people should be put on a pedestal and worshipped, rather than just thought of as any other non-disabled person would be. Then Matt's in an alleyway with some bullies, and you can see there's a fight scene, and he uses his stick to beat them up, and he looks pretty pleased with himself. He's able to beat the bullies at their own game. Back in the dressing room, Matt's father is talking to a man called Fallon, played by Mark Margolis, who is in an uncredited role. He wants him to throw a match because Fallon has a lot of money on him losing, and he reminds him that he should think about his son before he says no. In the ring, Jack's on the floor and Matt's in the crowd, and he's shouting for him. His dad is losing and he wants him to get up. So Jack sees his son in the audience and gets to his feet and finishes the match, defeating his opponent. But he is going to pay for it. Outside, Matt is practicing his boxing moves, and then he senses that his dad might be in trouble. So then he finds his dad after he's been beaten up by the criminals, and his dad has died. Then you cut to a POV shot zooming in on the eyes of a figure in a stained glass window, and it goes inside, and Matt is in a bath. He's in his apartment now, and he's a grown man. It's Ben Affleck. And he's wiping his face, and he looks up as he hears an airplane going overhead. He turns on some loud metal music, presumably to drown it out, and while he's making breakfast, and he touches the wall in his apartment as he leaves, which is a directorial choice, I'd imagine, but if you lived in an apartment and you are a blind person, it's your apartment, so I'd presume that at this point Matt has lived in this apartment for a long time, so he wouldn't need to touch the wall to know where the wall is, because it's his apartment. He's used to the surroundings. But anyway, he's been caught. Matt is standing in front of a jury and is talking about a criminal. His name is Jose Coseda, and he's played by Paul Ben-Victor. He shows no remorse for what he did, And Matt's friend and partner in the law firm, Foggy, played by Jon Favreau, is going through some Polaroids of what the man has done. However, outside, Matt and Foggy see the man get into the car because he's been set free and justice hasn't been done, and they talk about how awful it was that he got away scot-free. However, you cut to Daredevil, and there's a series of quick movements and a stylish shot here and there, and that sort of reminds me of the old Batman things, when Batman used to get on his suit in the 90s. There were shots of him, the chest, the cape, the cowl, the butt. I mean, that was Batman and Robin, but you understand. They did it for Daredevil as well, and it seems like they're copying, but I suppose it was the style at the time. Daredevil's moving across the rooftops, heading to where the criminal is going to be, and he finds him in a bar, and Daredevil sits on the rafters looking down, and the criminals notice him quickly, but before they can do anything about it, Daredevil swoops down and beats them all up in a series of choreographed fights. This is what he came for. This is the big moment of what Daredevil can really do. And there are shots of his radar vision observing the area around him as he keeps fighting, and he finally stands at the end of the bar as the audience sees all the people that he's been up on the floor and burning pool tables. I mean, it looks really good. it's stylish, but with the pool tables being on fire, it's a bit much. I don't know. That's just with me. Daredevil slowly pursues the man through the streets as he runs away scared. They go down to a train station with a lot of noise, and Daredevil uses his stick to bang on a metal railing to sort of centre his hearing, and he uses his radar sense to find where the man is, and he beats him up and he makes him fall onto the tracks as a train comes along. I mean, yes, in the 90s Batman did kill people, but this seems a bit much. Daredevil is not your parents' Batman or something like that. Police turn up with a reporter called Ben Urich, and he's played by Joey Pantoliano, or Joey Pants to his friends and well-wishers. Ben is looking for signs of a supposed character called Daredevil, which has been reported about and heard about in rumour but never properly seen. And this is a point where somebody drops a match on the floor, which reveals Daredevil's logo in flames, and it's reflected in Ben's glasses. And again, this looks really good, but how did Matt do that? And why? And there's no other reason other than it looks cool. Matt comes home and touches his dad's boxing gloves as he comes into the room because they're hanging up on the wall. He goes to his answer machine and he puts away his superhero suit. He has a shower while he feels a bit of pain in his mouth, so he digs out a tooth and throws it away and takes out some pills from his medicine cabinet, which is for the pain. I mean, this is a tough guy. He's got special powers, but he's still human. The next day, Matt goes to confessional at his local church. Father Everett, of course, knows who he is, and he's worried about Matt, saying that he's a man without fear. A man without fear being the name of one of the most popular Daredevil comics. And he says that a man without fear is a man without hope. He says that he's not really keen on the devilled outfit either, considering he goes to church and he's Catholic. At a cafe, Matt and Foggy are talking about the article about Daredevil in the newspaper. Matt says that he shouldn't believe everything he reads, and Foggy says that they need better clients because they're not making as much money. Matt argues that the clients are good people and don't need the money. But Matt then senses a change in the air and a woman comes in. And this is Elektra, and she's played by Jennifer Garner. Matt gets up and goes over to her. He asks her for some money, and she says it's right there in front of him. She's gonna go, "Are you blind?" And then it turns out that Matt is blind. So she apologises, and there's something between them. It's what they call a meet cute in cinema, where two romantic partners meet for the first time, and it's like they've been hit by thunderbolts of love. But then she leaves the cafe. Matt follows her and asks for her name. He takes her hand as she tries to leave, and she doesn't like that he's touched her, so they start dance fighting. And this is the tonal shift in the film. I mean, if you thought some of the bits were ridiculous so far, wait till you hear this. They take off their jackets and continue the dance fight, and Elektra at one point gets on a seesaw, which Matt joins her on, and they start to fight some more. It's all very choreographed, and I think they were going for cool, but it looks very silly. It's like the director of the film thought, let's go for a dark drama about justice and revenge and take it all very seriously, but then the fight choreographer said, right, we're making a comic book movie. Anyway, after all the dancing and the fighting, Elektra tells him her name. Cut to a tower block, and a man is standing there, and he's called Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, and he's standing in front of a glass window. This is his building, it seems, and he's played by Michael Clark Duncan. His associate called Nicholas, played by Eric Avari, says that people are talking about his criminal dealings and that he wants out because he's afraid. Basically, it seems that Kingpin has him under the thumb, and it's not entirely clear why yet. Matt and Elektra are talking about their childhoods. She asks him how he did all the things that he did earlier on when they were fighting, and Matt just says, he grew up around the park, it's something he's used to do. And I mean, considering what they did, it was like, that's not plausible. No, my way in a million years. But anyway, we cut to Kingpin, and he says he wants to put an end to all the public scrutiny about his life, and so he wants to hire Bullseye, who's an assassin. And he cut to Bullseye in a pub, and he's played by Colin Farrell. And he's hitting a bullseye on a dartboard without even looking, and he's drinking a pint of beer. And he gets the money he won for the bet and walks away. But a man starts to insult him, and, doing the Irish thing, and really getting on his nerves. So Bullseye turns back, and he takes off his beanie, revealing a bullseye, sort of, not tattoo, but sort of indentation on his forehead. Another strange choice for the movie, honestly. And he takes some paper clips, straightening them out, and flicks them one by one into the man's throat. They're like little tiny bullets. And it gets in his throat and it kills the man. And there's a brief scene about Matt and Foggy talking about Elektra, and he says that Elektra's full name, Elektra Nachos, sounds like some kind of Mexican dish or something. It was a comic book name. It's not the best comic book name, but move on. Next scene, Bullseye's on a plane, and presumably he's got a call from Kingpin asking for his expertise. And he's sitting next to a racist old lady who's talking a lot, and he's trying to resist the urge to kill her. But then Bullseye finally cracks, and he flicks a peanut, which bounces off the wall and into her mouth, and she chokes and dies instantly, to which the air hostess thinks that the old lady has just fallen asleep. In the next scene, the criminal's roughing up some people in an alleyway, and the silhouette of Daredevil appears. He chases him down, and the criminal tells him that Kingpin runs the streets now and there's nothing he can do about it. And then Daredevil goes into the criminal's apartment and he finds a small boy crying there. This is presumably the criminal's son. And Daredevil reassures him that he's not the bad guy. But the kid is crying, he's scared, he's cowering in a corner. And this just prompts Daredevil to repeat over and over that he's not the bad guy. But the more he says it, the less convinced he sounds. At Matt's office, Karen, played by Ellen Pompeo, is at the office and hands Matt their invitations for an event. And although if you may have seen the Netflix, Disney, Marvel TV series, this is all you're going to see, Karen, I'm afraid. So there you go. Bit of a nod and a wink to the audience, but that's it. Matt says he doesn't want to go to this event, but Foggy wants to go because there will be a lot of potential rich clients there. And Matt gets angry about it because he's not in it for the money, he's in it for the justice. And Foggy thinks that Matt is really angry because about Elektra. He thinks that Matt is going to give up on her before it's even started, and he encourages her to give it a chance before she turns him down, which he thinks she'll do. In the street, Elektra comes up to him, and she comes up from behind, and he still is able to notice her. And he says it's because he smelled her perfume and heard her heels, but the audience knows that it's his super hearing and it's his senses and everything like that. Matt touches her face tenderly, moving his hand down as he notices a pendant around her neck. She says her mother gave it to her before she died. He says that they should go inside because it's about to rain, but Elektra doesn't believe him. But he explains that he can use his senses to feel when it's about to rain, and he also says that the droplets enhance his senses so that it can feel like he can actually see somebody as if he's not blind, because the rain forms a proper 3D image in his mind of what the person looks like. And as they're talking, it does start raining. It starts raining quite hard. It's Hollywood rain. It always comes down in buckets. And as the rain goes over them both, Matt sees Elektra in his mind, a 3D image of Jennifer Garner, basically, and he tells her that she's beautiful. He leans in for a kiss, and they kiss, but then Matt hears some voices angrily shouting, and he says that he has to go. This is the call of justice, and he has to flee. I mean, again, that's a bit Superman, but okay. Elektra wants him to stay though, and she convinces him otherwise, and they end up in bed together.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
I don't know what happened. But Elektra convinces him to do otherwise, and they end up in bed together. And as Matt lays in bed, he's running his fingers over the writing on the invitation that suggests that maybe he's changed his mind. So let's take the opportunity to talk about Braille. Because although Matt is seen as a child reading Braille, it seems that this scene has shown that he doesn't need to use it. Instead, Matt Murdock has some kind of super sensitivity when it comes to feeling objects, so that he can determine what they are. And that includes being able to feel the print raised on a piece of paper. Braille was invented in 1824 by Louis Braille, for whom it's named after. He developed it at the age of 15 after losing his sight when he was younger, and it was published 5 years later. It's also worth noting that Louis Braille was French, so that was the first language that Braille was translated from, and it also included musical notation. The second revision of Braille was then published in 1837, and was the first binary form of writing developed in the modern era. It was also later developed further by Charles Babbage, who called it night writing, supposedly intending it to be used by soldiers in order to communicate at night. However, the development has come under some dispute since its initial use was for helping blind people to read. After Berber's development, though, it was refined by Louis Braille himself, enabling the user to feel the letters more concisely. He also noted that Barber's adaptation was written phonetically and did not include the alphabet, which was changed. Over time, what started to be a literal translation to the page, Braille has become something more akin to shorthand, and there are Braille codes for over 133 languages. So when Matt Murdock uses it, he could be perhaps moving from Braille to English after having learned to read when he could see. However, quickly brushing his fingers over the letters on the page may have meant that he'd had to learn and memorise the alphabet all over again. At the event, Foggy is talking to Ben Ulrich, the reporter, and they're talking about Daredevil, and Matt says he doesn't believe in him, but Ben says that there are weirder things that he's heard about. They then see Kingpin coming into the room, and Foggy approaches him. Kingpin says that he should give them one of his cards, but Matt says he can't represent him. There's something about him that Matt doesn't trust, and Kingpin says that nobody's really innocent, and he leaves. Foggy then notices Elektra arrive. She's standing on the balcony of a flight of stairs, and he's mesmerised. Well, it's Jennifer Garner. She's beautiful. And he offers to come up with Matt to go and see her, but Matt's already gone. He's making his way up the stairs, and as he's going up, you can see the radar vision kicking in. Various things are in his way, like smoke, and they meet at the top of the stairs, and Elektra looks very happy to see him. Foggy is standing by the staircase, though, and he's just saying hello to people as they pass. He's sort of implied that he's very much the third wheel in this situation now. Elektra and Matt slow dancing, and she takes off Matt's glasses, and she says that she wishes that he could see her, and he says he wishes he could as well. And although this is a minor moment, I feel like I should bring this up anyway. Generally, a disabled person does not wish for their disability to go away, especially if they were born disabled. There may be times where a disabled person may wish that they weren't disabled, but those times are more often than not a result of being treated differently, or the stigma that they may feel when trying to deal with something that a non-disabled person would not have to deal with. Matt wasn't born blind though, and there may be some things that he does miss. He has had the ability to see as he was before he lost his sight, but I would suggest that often he may not think about it, especially considering that his superpowers negate him even having a disability in the first place. The world may see him differently as they see him as a blind man, but Matt Murdock could probably just see himself as a man first and disabled second, even if that was that far up the list. He says he's happy, but that normally happens before something bad happens. And as if by magic, Elektra has foreshadowed what's going to happen, and because outside, Bullseye is revving up his motorbike. Kingpin looks over and sees Elektra, and he says he hasn't seen her so happy in a long time, which is unusual because so far we have not been told that they know each other. He then slips Nicholas a rose, telling him that it's time to say goodbye. And there's some commotion going on, people are leaving, and Elektra leaves and gets a limo with Nicholas, who turns out to be her father. Again, we are not told this up until this point, so it's a surprise to the audience, and a bit of more context before the event would have been better in my opinion. They talk and he says it's not safe there, and the camera implies that they're being hunted down, and the limo driver gets hit in the neck and he dies. And then Bullseye appears, but so does Daredevil. And Bullseye throws a spinning star at Daredevil, but he dodges it, and Bullseye is annoyed because he says he never misses. And they fight and get into a tussle, and Bullseye is able to get Daredevil's stick, and he throws it at Elektra's dad, and it pierces him through the chest, killing him instantly. Elektra gets up and shoots repeatedly at Bullseye, because she's got a gun now apparently, but she misses. And then she cries as she's kneeling over her father's body. At the crime scene, Ben turns up and the detective asks him if he's happy because he's got his story. Daredevil is definitely involved, and as far as Elektra's concerned, he's responsible. Matt's on a rooftop and he takes off his mask and he puts his head in his hands, feeling regret at not being able to stop Bullseye. At Nicholas's funeral, this is the point where it's the early 2000s, so Evanescence is going to turn up sometime. It might as well be now. So Evanescence's My Immortal starts playing, and Elektra meets Matt and she tells him that she wants to get revenge, but Matt says that revenge won't make the pain go away, because he knows. It starts to rain and Matt takes off his glasses, seeing Elektra again in the 3D image that it was before, but then she puts up her umbrella and she walks away. He asks her to stay, but she gets into a car and the car leaves. And then Kingpin is seen on the other side of the grounds, some way away, and he looks at Matt and he smiles before getting in his own car. This is what Kingpin wanted the whole time. At the morgue, Ben is shown a body by the mortician who's there. This mortician's name is Jack Kirby, in reference to the co-creator of Daredevil, and he's played by Kevin Smith. I mean, at the time and now, I suppose, Kevin Smith would have been an icon of comic book culture and everything like that, so it's a big cameo. But watching it now, I did laugh because I'd forgotten he was in it. Jack takes Daredevil's stick and twists it at the top, and it reveals that the stick is actually a cane. Next thing, Kingpin was with Bullseye, and Bullseye's killed Jose from earlier, and his body's in his office, and he says that he wants to kill the Daredevil because he feels like he missed his opportunity and he wants to get his reputation. He tells Kingpin that he wants a costume as well. Ben meets Matt in the street and says that it was Kingpin that killed Elektra's dad, and he goes after somebody's entire family if he wants to kill them. So it seems like Elektra may be next. Cut to Elektra, and again this is a stylized superhero shot, and she's got her signature knives which are in the comics, and she's set up a load of bags of flour, I think, which are hanging from some ropes in presumably what we think is her apartment, and she's using the knives and stabbing those bags of flour. That'll show them. I mean, it might look cool at the time, but isolated, it's a weird scene. Next scene, Daredevil's going to a rooftop. Bullseye climbs a ladder to go up to see him, and Daredevil's moving through some washing, and he's unaware of where Bullseye is, and he's suddenly startled by a pigeon. And this is where Elektra comes out of nowhere and starts attacking him, blaming him for her father's death. And she ends up skewering him in the shoulder with one of her knives, and takes off his mask to realise that it's Matt. And immediately she starts crying, apologising for hurting him, and holding his face, and she's full of regret that she realises that revenge is not the best way to do it. Not that she would have thought that Matt was responsible for the death of her father, but anyway. Bullseye turns up though, and he deflects Elektra's attacks by throwing back her knife at her, and it skewers right through her hand. But she then takes it out. It's very easy to get out because there's no blood or anything. This isn't that kind of movie. So they just go at it again. And he takes a playing card, which appears out of nowhere, and throws it at her, cutting her neck. So again, a very strange physics-based attack, but I guess somebody thought it looked cool. And Bullseye then picks her up and throws her back across the other rooftop as helicopters arrive, and he throws down a rose to Elektra's body as he leaves. A SWAT team arrives and they're running up the stairs inside the building, and Elektra goes back inside to see Matt. She helps him put back on his mask and they both leave. Just as the police officers arrive, and they're all aiming their guns, and they're confused because they were sure that somebody was in there. Matt then arrives at the church where Father Everett helps him out. Bullseye arrives though, and Daredevil gets up and starts putting his mask back on. Bullseye throws a bowl at him which hits Daredevil in the throat. He then chases Bullseye up the stairs, and they are literally interrupted by bats in the belfry, and some pipes from the organ fall down, and it starts to hurt Matt's ears because it's very intense sound, very loud. And Bullseye uses this to advantage and starts banging the pipes. He's throwing things at Matt, but he misses, ending up shattering a stained glass window, and he picks up the pieces of the stained glass window, putting them in a pile in his hand, and he throws them at him, sort of very quickly. It's, again, describing these fight scenes is really weird. It's so funny. But then Bullseye keeps banging the pipes, and it's affecting Matt's hearing, and Bullseye hits him with a pipe, raising it above his head for a final blow. However, for some reason, a sniper takes a shot from another building through the window, a stained glass window of which you won't be able to see Bullseye, and it pierces through Bullseye's hands, leaving him defenseless supposedly, and it holds his hands up like it's stigmata. Again, somebody thought that would look cool. And then Matt takes an advantage, picking up Bullseye and dropping him from the church onto a police car on the ground. Again, this superhero takes no prisoners. And then Father Everett looks up as Daredevil makes his escape, wishing him luck. And in the next scene, Kingpin is informed that Bullseye has failed. And Daredevil's overlooking the city now. He gets to Kingpin's office and they start to fight. Kingpin picks up Matt over his head, raising him up to the ceiling and throwing him down to the ground. It's a big moment. Michael Clark Duncan's a big guy, so it looks entirely plausible. Matt then breaks some glass as Kingpin has got him onto the floor, and it lets the rain come in, and so Matt now has the advantage because he has a full 3D image in his mind of where Kingpin is at all times. And they fight in the rain, and it looks very pretty, it looks really good. And Daredevil hits Kingpin's legs, knocking him to the floor, and stands above him. And he strikes down his stick, and it's implied that he might kill him, but not this time. Instead, he stands above Kingpin, reassuring him that he's not the bad guy. Matt then tells him the police are coming and that he can hear the sirens in the background. And Kingpin says that he'll tell people who he is. And Matt says that he should go ahead, tell him that he was beaten up by a blind man. And Kingpin says that he'll get out. And Matt says that he'll be waiting for him. Presumably they wanted to set up a sequel. But well, if you've been watching the Daredevil TV series, you'll understand that there is still that conflict between them. And then next scene, Matt and Foggy are talking about what happened to Kingpin, that he was brought to justice, and Foggy thinks that Daredevil did it, but Matt disagrees, as there were no witnesses. In the next scene though, Daredevil's on a rooftop, and a voiceover says that he's come to terms with his revenge plan, and says that it's faith that's what he needs. Ben is writing up a story, and is about to write that Matt is Daredevil, but then he starts to delete the entire story, going back one space at a time. I mean, set it all and do it, but slowly doing it looks more dramatic, I guess. But then Ben goes outside and he looks up to see Daredevil on a rooftop, and he tells him to go get him. And Daredevil whips away to the sound of new metal. There's real ending. That's my interpretation of nu metal. And as this is a Marvel movie, there's no post-credit sequence, but there's a mid-credit sequence. Bullseye's in the hospital, he's fully bandaged up and restrained, he's got arms and legs in casts, and he's not looking the best, he's alive, and they assume that they were going to bring him back for the sequel as well. And there are two officers standing outside and guarding him, but inside there's a fly and it's making a lot of noise and it's annoying Bullseye, and he's getting agitated, and he manages to flip a hypodermic needle and it pins the fly to the wall. And that's how they end the movie. Okay, you may have guessed what my general opinion of this movie may have been, but I'm going to give a more rounded account of what I think of the film and give an idea of what I think this would mean for the non-disabled audience who are watching. Daredevil is one of those superhero films that were made to quickly cash in on the superhero craze that was so successful with adaptations of Spider-Man and the X-Men. Although a character which is proven to deserve such an adaptation, it feels like it was rushed out, with 20th Century Fox giving audiences what they thought they wanted rather than what actually worked for the story. There is certainly something there with themes of revenge, faith, and the overwhelming sense of justice that so many superhero origins include. However, something seems to have gone wrong in the edit, and with the director's cut proving to be more well received, it shows that there could have been a little more thought on what the story and the characters could bring rather than just what they thought would look cool on the big screen. The general audience may not have even heard of Daredevil at this point either. What with Batman, Superman and Spider-Man being the most successful examples of superhero franchises, Daredevil may have been seen as one too many superhero films. Imagine that. Also, the character does lean into the cliches of what a blind person is supposed to look like. In his everyday life, he uses a cane and dark glasses, which is so often paired with what blind people are supposed to look like. Also, his superpowers only emphasise the myth that losing one sense meant that all the other senses were heightened. However, over time, people have seen the film for what it is, and some can even enjoy it as a bit of campy nonsense, understanding that a real blind person can actually be quite different. Okay, so first let's talk about Daredevil. Daredevil made his first appearance in a Marvel comic in 1964. Bullseye was created by comic book writer Mark Wolfman and artist John Romita Sr. for Daredevil 131, March 1976. He was drawn in that first appearance by Bob Brown and inks by Klaus Janson. For the movie, Rennie Harlin, Sam Raimi, Tim Burton, Mark AZDP and Chris Columbus were considered to direct. Ben Affleck was originally in the running to play Bullseye, but after Kevin Smith suggested that he could be a good Daredevil, he eventually got the role. However, Matt Damon turned down the role of Daredevil as he didn't have enough faith in the script or the director. Vin Diesel was also offered the role but opted to play it in the Chronicles of Riddick instead. Among the other people considered were Leonardo DiCaprio, Ryan Reynolds, Colin Farrell, Matthew Davis, Edward Norton, Guy Pearce and Patrick Wilson. The film was originally envisioned as R-rated, with nudity and hard violence, with the core storyline being based on Frank Miller's story arcs. The introduction and flashback were taken from his miniseries Daredevil Man Without Fear, and many of the sequences follow John Romita Jr.'s artwork shot for shot. The Elektra storyline occurred in Miller's original run on the comic in the early 1980s. As a fan of the character, Ben Affleck made a point of reading every single comic book that featured Daredevil in preparation for the role. He also wrote the foreword of the collected paperback edition of Kevin Smith's run on the Daredevil comic book. As he was playing the role, Ben Affleck was virtually blind, as he had to wear heavy-duty contact lenses which blocked out most of his vision. Stan Akatic was auditioned for the role of Elektra Natchios, but also Kate Winslet, Jerry Ryan, Nicole Kidman, Penelope Cruz, Salma Hayek, Natalie Portman, Lucy Liu, Jessica Alba, Katie Holmes, Maya Maestro, Rona Mitra, Jolene, Monica Bellucci, Eliza Dushku and Nev Campbell were also considered for the role. In the big fight scene, Jennifer Garner accidentally kicked Ben Affleck so hard in the head that he briefly blacked out. And this is the first time that Colin Farrell had ever used his Irish accent in an American movie. Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man number 50 in 1967. It wasn't until Daredevil 170 in 1981, though, when Frank Miller was writing, that he tangled with Daredevil. And since then he's been a major part of the Daredevil comics. When Michael Clark Duncan was cast, he weighed 305 pounds, and he was asked to gain at least 20 pounds for the role, in order to fit the physique of Kingpin. And in order to do this, he would lift weights for 30 minutes a day, and powerlifted with 1 or 2 reps a day, as well as eating whatever he wanted. And although in the comics, Kingpin is a white character, there were so many bad auditions from white wrestlers that Michael Clark Duncan stood out significantly as a frontrunner. However, in the original character sketches, he was drawn as an African-American character. It was scrapped though, because what with the character debuting in the mid-60s, they thought it might hit a nerve in the media having a black villain in the comic in the midst of the civil rights movement. And it seemed that this experience has weighed down on Ben Affleck ever since, because he said that he didn't ever want to play Daredevil again after the critical and audience responses. He also said he thought that playing Daredevil had inoculated him from ever playing another superhero ever again, and we all know that aged well. A deadline of October 10th, 2012 was set so that if a movie didn't start filming by then, the rights for Daredevil would refer back to Marvel Studios. Directors such as David Slade and Joe Carnahan were involved, with the latter pitching an idea of setting Daredevil in a hard-boiled 1970s Manhattan, but the studio let the rights lapse and go back to Marvel, and the rest of their say is history. Also, Stan Lee said that he didn't like the film because he felt the film was too tragic. Kingpin and Ben Urich were also often seen in Spider-Man comics, as was Daredevil. However, seeing as Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man, it was decided that Spider-Man wasn't ever going to be referenced in the Daredevil movie. While working on the movie, actor and director Jon Favreau began discussions with Marvel over what would eventually become Iron Man. So if you think it's unusual to see him in this movie, then there was a reason why. The film pays homage to numerous Daredevil writers and artists. Father Everett is named after Bill Everett, who, as I said earlier, is Daredevil's original artist. Joe Quesada is named after editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, an artist of Daredevil from 1998 to 2000. Colin, who is also the name of a boxer, is named after Gene Colan, another Daredevil artist from 1966 to 1974. And the boxer against whom Jack Murdock is supposed to take a dive for is called John Romita. John Romita Sr. was a Daredevil artist in 1966, while his son, John Romita Jr., was a Daredevil artist from 1988 to 1990. Also, there's a thug called Kane in there, and he's named after Gil Kane, a Daredevil cover artist from 1971 to 1978. Also, there are other boxers called Miller, Mack and Bendis, after Frank Miller, the writer and artist from 1979 to 1983, David Mack, an artist from 1999 to 2001, and Brian Michael Bendis, writer of Daredevil beginning 1999, and was still doing so when the film came out. At about 22 minutes into the film, Daredevil has a few boxes containing currency, and on the side are Braille labels. One of them says USS Enterprise, and one of them says NCC 1701-D, which is the serial number for Captain Picard's Star Trek Enterprise. I like that there's a nice little joke in there, and it's in Braille, so if you know, you know. And that's around an hour and a half into the movie, the Braille writing on the charm pendant that Elektra has around her neck spells AILEKTRA. The first character is a single dot in the middle, and it's a Braille letter A. Characters with dots only in first column K and L are placed in the middle. So they got it wrong, basically. And if you were to get the movie on DVD back in the day, you would have seen on the main menu at the top, above where it says DVD main menu, it says in Braille, Daredevil main menu. Which is a nice touch, I suppose, but it also misunderstands the meaning of Braille and the use of it. But it's just somebody showing off. And also, if you remember, I mentioned a rat right at the beginning of the movie that seemed to disappear into a grate in the sewer and just disappear into steam. That was entirely CGI, and the reason for that was that they couldn't really get the real one to move in the way that they wanted. Matt Murdock's breakup phone message from Heather is a reference to Heather Glenn, Murdock's girlfriend during Frank Miller's first run on the Daredevil comic book. Murdock and Heather broke up though during the end of that run. And for those who really need to know, in the Marvel canon, this film, along with Elektra in 2005, the spin-off, is classified as taking place on Earth 701306. The opening shot of Daredevil hanging from the church steeple was taken from the cover of Daredevil Volume 2, Number 3, January 1999, published under the Marvel Knights imprint. That issue was written by Kevin Smith. And also some of the fun little facts I found out. A 19-year-old Seth Rogen auditioned to play Foggy Nelson, Matt Murdock's partner in his law firm. Director Mark Steven Johnson said he was so funny and we loved him, but he was way too young to be a lawyer, because he was only 19. Also, Jason Statham expressed an interest in playing Daredevil in 2008, when 20th Century Fox was developing a reboot. Frank Miller was also endorsed Statham for the role. And finally, seeing as I mentioned some cameos in the film, I should tell you the ones that I missed. Firstly, around half an hour into the film, there's Claudine Farrell, who is Colin Farrell's sister. She's heard on an answering machine, and she also appears in the pub scene where Bullseye is introduced. And in 2020, she also marries Daredevil's director, Mark Steven Johnson. And about an hour into the film, you can see Frank Miller, and he's quickly shown dead as Bullseye pulls away on his stolen motorcycle. I mean, that's a hell of a cameo. That's it for this week. Next week I'll be watching Monkey Shines, the 1980s horror cult classic about a quadriplegic man whose helper monkey starts killing people. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.